All right, gentlemen, welcome to week 9. Apologize, I had some settings messed up on these previous videos. Thank you, Dylan, for pointing those out to me. But now you can actually comment on the YouTube video itself if you want to, not a requirement. But that is a possibility to do now. Thanks, Dylan, for pointing out that setting mistake to me. Figuring this out as we get into this. This is week 3 doing videos like this. Hope you're liking it. It's a lot easier on me, enjoying this. But last week was bad. Last week I went 1-7. Shout out to William. Thank you for the one win that I got correctly. Overall record took a tank with that and is now 31-25, but still overall not bad. Got to mention it here again. We've been talking about in the group chat, but good old Luke spent $41 on Irv Smith, but he did start him at least. I thought he was going to bench him for a minute, but you got to play him when you spend that kind of money on a guy. And he got a high ankle sprain and is now out for at least 4 weeks, probably actually for the season. And to make matters worse, his team, the Vikings, traded for TJ Hawkinson, the actual tight end, to play now. And so that was a good $41. See ya, Luke. Don't worry, you can celebrate the fact that you're getting married here in just over a week. So we'll focus on that rather than fantasy football. If you look at my preseason predictions, I said that Luke would finish lower than normal. Yep, looking like that's still more accurate week after week. Last week, I mentioned my sports gambling podcast at Coach and Prof last week, but the episode for this week is now live. Spoiler alert, we talked about Tennessee being number 1 a whole lot. Go freaking Vols. But if you want to listen to that before tonight's football game, feel free to check it out. It's about 25 minutes. We got about 6 weeks of the regular season left at this point. And remember, the last 3 weeks we will play our interdivision again, so everyone is still alive. No one is out of it yet. Rusty is still killing it in the points for category and record. But here in a couple weeks, I'll start the process of beginning the eliminator portion of this, where as people are knocked out of the playoffs, I will let y'all know that. But let's get into it. Jeffrey versus myself to start off. Jeffrey's team is got no defense right now, but who needs a defense in fantasy? Dylan didn't pick one up a few weeks ago, lost to Dylan because of it. But no defense, no problem, I guess, for Jeffrey. We'll see. I get Josh Allen and Austin Eckler back, so be scared, Jeffrey. Josh Jacobs should have a heyday for Jeffrey, as should Miles Sanders. Devontae Adams should, but that Raiders offense has been grossly underperforming with Derek Carr. Dante Foreman, luckily, Chuba Hubbard should be back to make him a little less effective. But Deion Jackson could be sneaky this week as well for him. Luckily, he does lose Deebo Samuel for me, and Jeff Wilson has become useless with the CMC trade. But now that Jeff Wilson's over in Miami, if Mostert was ever get hurt, that could be valuable for him. I lose a couple players to buy, but nothing like a major starter. Jeffrey will be able to put up points here, especially with Jared Goff against Green Bay. Jacoby Myers is underrated fantasy asset for him. But with no defense and the points, it has me projected to win by 14. I don't think I'll win that easily, but I will take myself to win because how can I not? Next up is Matt versus Dylan. Matt is 1-7, and if you look at his roster, it's hard to believe based off some of the pieces he has, but there he is sitting at 1-7. Dylan barely beat me last week. Painful loss. Sits at 5-3 now. Is in the thick of things in his division. Kenneth Walker has been amazing for him in the last few weeks. Antonio Gibson somehow was useful for him last week. Wouldn't bank on that to be continuous. But A.J. Brown went off last week, so it's feeling like a Devontae Smith week this week instead of A.J. Brown. We'll see tonight on that. Jared Everett could be in for a huge week, though, with Palmer questionable, Keenan Allen questionable, and Mike Williams out for that Chargers team, a.k.a. Austin Eckler should be amazing for me. Darnell Mooney is finally starting to look playable, although they did just trade for Claypool as well, so that might hurt his value some. But until I see something from Matt, I don't know how I can bet on him to win, even though I love his team. Jalen Hurts is great. Joe Mixon is high volume, high touchdown. James Robinson was good. He should start to be better as he gets into that offense, but against Buffalo this week, no thanks. Drake London doesn't ever get thrown the ball. Hawkinson won't know the playbook enough yet probably to be effective. Dylan wins pretty handily against Matt. Delwyn versus Rusty, the team no one wants to face right now. However, I got to see what's going on here, but he is projected for 76 points. What we got going on? We got a a bye week for 2 of his players. Okay. He gets Kelsey back, though. That'll be a huge boost. Uh, he's holding on to Brees Hall. Good for you, Dad. Believe in him. That somehow he'll recover from a torn ACL before this season is over for fantasy purposes. Not happening. Uh, but good week to face Dad as far as some injuries. He has no bench depth at all, but Kelsey will make a big difference. But as of now, he won't even be able to field a full lineup with his team. So we'll see what happens with that. Delwyn, like I said, will continue to get better. Uh, but Gus Edwards is questionable. DeAndre Swift apparently isn't fully healthy, but Tyler Boyd should take off as their offense gets used to Jamar Chase not being around. Kyron Williams still probably not that weak yet for him for the Rams, but at some point I think he will be a viable option, but not yet. Throwing out both Cincinnati receivers on the same team with Jamar Chase out is going to be very beneficial for him for the short term. When Jamar Chase is back, I don't know about how successful that strategy will be. Oh, he also has the Cincinnati tight end. He's running out all the pass catchers for the Bengals, and normally that would be a good thing. And against Carolina, yeah, that's not a bad strategy, but there's no way all 3 of them can go off, especially with how bad they looked against the Browns last week. Wow, that is unique. I've never seen that before. Austin has 3 of the Cowboys, but he's never started all 3 in the same week. But here we are. I can't pick against Rusty with what he's been doing so far. I think Dylan's team will be competitive, but I just don't think having all 3 players from the same team can be a successful strategy to win. Although if there's a team to do it against, Carolina might be that one. Rusty wins. Michael versus Allen. Michael's projected to win by a balmy 0.8 here to get started. Allen does not have CMC. There's his big problem. And shout out to Allen. He is actually making moves. I hated on him last week and assumed he wouldn't. But he did, and he won last week based off of that. So I will operate accordingly in my predictions. My apologies, Allen. Michael may or may not have Jonathan Taylor. Assumption is he will play. He didn't practice yesterday, but he did hurt his ankle, but he still finished the game. He loses his tight end and his backup tight end and his backup quarterback and his backup running back. So lots of buys for Michael this week, but really only loses a tight end in defense with no one starting so far. Will he make changes to that or just suck it up for this week and not lose one of those players? Remains to be seen. Travis Etienne has been amazing for Allen ever since they moved James Robinson. Aaron Rodgers surely has to get better, right? And who better to do that against than the Lions? Sammy Watkins, no thanks. But if Alan Lazard is still out, sure, maybe. Van Jefferson, as long as Kupp is hindered and maybe hurt this week, could be beneficial to him. I'm going to trust in Allen to make moves and make some changes in his lineup, although he currently doesn't have another running back on his roster to fill the CMC hole. Both of these teams have decisions to make, so this prediction is more or less a guess on who will do something. I made the mistake last week. I'll go with Allen this week, although Michael definitely has the better overall running back and QB in general, but I'll take the rest of the pieces. Michael should win this game based off of name value and having a lineup, but let's have some fun. Let's pick Allen to win it and to make up for our mistake from last week. Mac versus Ryan. Ryan's team is starting to take off now and be where he normally finishes within that top tier of his division. Mac loses Najee Harris. Might not be a bad thing. He's been atrocious anyway, but he also loses CeeDee Lamb, George Kittle, and Jimmy Garoppolo. Wow. Ryan picked up Deshaun Watson and will be holding on to him for another month until he's allowed to play in early December. Basically, that is a playoff pickup. So good for you to looking ahead. Brandon Cooks is likely going to take himself out of playing this week. It sounds like, being mad that he didn't get traded and is stuck with Davis Mills as his quarterback. Who wouldn't be happy? Michael Thomas probably still also not back. But even without them, he still has a full lineup, still has Stephon Diggs, still has Romeo Doubs, still a very solid team without those players. Ryan's team is definitely rounding into form. Mac's problem is he does have all the great receivers, but Keenan Allen is still questionable with whatever this hamstring issue that's going on. So if he doesn't play, that's a massive loss for Mac, having 4 stud receivers and then it's still not being enough. However, Mac could get Cordero Patterson back this week, be a big boost to his chances in this game. but I can't trust Derek Carr right now as a quarterback in fantasy with how he was last week. Somehow they're worse despite adding Devontae Adams. I'll take Ryan to win. William versus Barrett. Barrett snuck out a close one last week with Nick Chubb coming through with 2 tutties in the Monday night game. And William was our highest scorer of the whole league last week. So fun little matchup here. Starting a Miami quarterback is, in fact, a good thing for William the last few weeks. Tua has come back into form and stayed healthy. Alvin Kamara finally scored touchdowns last week, made up for not having scored any by getting 3 in 1 week. Both these rosters, when you look at them, are pretty strong. Williams is definitely better as of now with Barrett having lost Jamar Chase and Nick Chubb on bye and Pat Freiermuth on bye and Latavius Murray on bye and J.K. Dobbins out. So Barrett has no bench depth at all. If Matt Collins or Chuba Hubbard doesn't play, he's got nothing in the tank. Probably won't drop anybody to fill those slots. Terry McLaurin is better with Wentz out for William. Mark Andrews may not play with the injury that he sustained, so that's something to keep an eye on. But William has depth. He's got good starters here. I will take William to win, and very convincingly based off his performance last week, and Barrett not having Nick Chubb, and Lamar Jackson being not who he was through the first 3 weeks. Austin versus Derek. Austin is projected for only 68 points. He doesn't have Zeke or Pollard or his kicker or Michael Gallup. His 3 QBs, or 3 Cowboys, excuse me, we've talked about with Dylan's team, having 3 of the same offensive players on one team. This is where it kills you. They're on bye, so he doesn't have any of them. And he, in fact, does not have a single running back on his team that can play. He doesn't have any on the bench, not one in the flex. Both of his are on bye. So I think he's just taking the loss this week. Derek loses one of his defenses and his stud running back in Barkley and Deontay Johnson. Not a huge loss there, but losing Barkley hurts. However, there's a week to lose him. Be playing a team that doesn't have any running backs at all. Patrick Mahomes should put up big points against this Tennessee secondary, but enough to matter. Probably not with not having any running backs. And Cooper Kupp for Austin is highly questionable at this point. I think Austin's just taking the L this week. Derek wins by far and away. Last matchup, OP versus Luke. Luke is projected to win. OP snuck out a win last week, but Luke is supposed to get it this week despite having the worst record than OP. Ouch, Luke. OP loses Edmonds and Judy to buy. Edmonds, because he got traded, is why he loses him. That stinks. Can't help that trade deadline. Also, if you didn't know, record-setting trade deadline for the NFL this year. Never had that many trades in one trade deadline as we did this year. Not a whole lot of fantasy relevance in a lot of them, but still cool. Luke loses Russell Wilson to buy. So what? And his defense to buy. But overall, OP will make the moves to fix his lineup, I think, but he's missing a running back and a flex. And he doesn't have a running back to replace it with since Ingram got hurt last week. I just still can't count on Marcus Mariota, even though he did throw 3 touchdown passes last week, which was awesome for Pitts, for me, and fantasy everywhere, as well as Falcons fans. They got a crazy overtime win last week. I just don't think Dalvin Cook and Mariota are going to be enough to overcome King Henry, who finally exploded after a terrible first 2 weeks, really came in full form. If you haven't looked at his stats against the Texans specifically, please do that. It is incredible what he has consistently done against that team. Luke gets the dub. Looking forward to seeing everybody in just over a week from today, actually. Thanks, Luke, for getting married so we can do this. Also, a rumor on the street is every cousin will be there, so pumped about that. My next recording will actually be coming from Brevard, North Carolina, as we'll be getting there earlier in the week. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing everybody there.